is Dr. John Jackson on the political arm of the show. Today we're going to talk about police brutality and the problem it's created in the inner city and in most communities in the United States. A few weeks ago there was an incident in New York City where a retired tennis star James Blake was attacked by a police officer. And this brought to light again the problem with police in New York City. The officer that attacked Mr. Blake was an officer who's done this several times before. He has like 9 different times where he has attacked a citizen in New York, and he has all kinds of lawsuits against him, and his name is Francescatori. And this is what happens almost always across this country. When you look at the record of the police officers who are using excessive force, who are shooting citizens that shouldn't be shot, they have these 4, 5, 6 serious complaints in their records. And the chiefs, the commissioners, and the sheriffs seem unwilling to take an action. Now, Francescatori was an officer in Florida, and in Florida, he worked in an all-white community, and his record was stellar. As soon as he came to New York, he started acting out. There are several people who have lawsuits in against him. But Mr. Blake, being famous, really shed light on this problem. The mayor and Commissioner Bratton, de Blasio, the mayor and Commissioner Bratton, every time they talk about the police in New York, they say the same thing. This shouldn't have happened. And they offer an apology, but they never take the actions to do anything to correct the police. Today in New York City alone, there's approximately 400 police officers who are still on payroll, and they have all committed some type of felony in New York City. And these officers are not fit to carry a gun or a badge anymore in New York, but they're still getting paid. Now, today I'm going to try to come up with a solution. If we are going to solve the problem with police brutality in America, it's going to have to come from those that are elected in cities, like the councilmen, the county supervisors, the police chiefs, the commissioners, and they are going to have to change the way police officers are trained. In a general sense, police officers are trained to be violent. They are trained to win a confrontation and at all costs. And they are not trained to disengage, step away, and come back later and solve the problem. For example, we had a young lady down in Stockton, California named Mitzi Singh. Ms. Singh was executed by the police. They fired 600 rounds into a car that they knew she was in. And when the chief, Jones, spoke about it, he said, "What were my officers supposed to do? They shot at us." And my question was, would he have done the same thing had his wife been in the car with those guys that robbed the bank? And secondly, I think that any of us could have accepted the bank robbers killing Ms. Singh instead of the police. So they need to learn how to disengage. It's got to happen. If they don't start doing that, and you can always see little things happening across the country where people are starting to take matters in their own hand. And I'm not encouraging anyone to go out and do any harm to a police officer, because there are a lot of good police officers and we need them. But the bad ones have to go. And the only way they are going to go is the first time they act out, the chief or the sheriff or whoever the mayor or the commissioner is, they have to take an action to remove that person from the law enforcement payroll. And if they keep doing that, the police will see and law enforcement will see that this is not going to be allowed. But what has happened is every time there's an incident in America, And I'm not just talking about in California or New York. You can go to Mississippi, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, everywhere. If you look in that policeman records, there's prior conduct that was a warning sign that this guy shouldn't be a policeman. And if these people who are in charge, the administrators, would act and take these people off the street, the first time, if it's not that serious, if it's just something that got out of hand, train them. But the second, third, fourth time, that guy should not have a badge, because eventually someone is going to be hurt. Now, what we are seeing in America all over this country is that people are getting very tired of this constant abuse. You had an officer in Illinois. Now, there were 3 people, they say, according to his radio, that was suspicious looking. He follows 3 people into the woods and he gets himself killed. Instead of setting up a perimeter, calling for backup, and then catching the people. And to this day, they don't know what crime they committed. They were just running from the police. But it cost him his life. In Oakland, California, we had 2, I believe, sergeants that were shot to death. There was a guy that had already killed a cop with a machine gun. He had an AK-47. Instead of them surrounding the perimeter when they found out where he was, they were so eager to kill him, they ran in and got themselves killed. They didn't wait. They didn't set up a perimeter. They didn't call a backup. They did none of the things that peace officers are trained to do. I used to be a peace officer. I know a lot of the things that should have happened. They didn't do it. They wanted to execute him, and they ended up getting executed. They didn't follow police procedures. Now, in the Stockton case, when this young lady was executed, and it was an execution, they should have disengaged. All they had to do was back off, and if the criminals had killed this woman, that's what criminals do, and they could have been prosecuted and sent to prison like they are going to do for this one guy. But the police, the ones who fired those 600 shots into that SUV, nothing happened to them. Not one of them was held accountable, and they committed a murder. That's all it is. It's a murder. All they had to do was just let them go, catch them later. All they wanted to do was get away. And then you have what happened in Charlotte. In Charlotte, they caught the police officer trying to plant his taser by a dead body. The man was running away from him. He was wanted for child support payment, failure to pay child support. And he was running away. And he was shot 5 or 6 times, all from the back. And once the officer realized what he had done, he tried to pick up his taser, because he had already lied, and take it over and drop it by the dead man's body and said that he had my taser. It still would have been murder, because a taser not that far away is not dangerous. He didn't have his gun, but he just thought he could cover himself. And I assure you, if that young man that was standing at that park and filmed that incident had kept his mouth shut for a week or 2, the police would have created a story to take him away from being the criminal that he is, because it had already started. They said he grabbed my taser, I feared for my life. And you have the guy in Ferguson. Here's a guy 30 feet away, is shot to death. And the officer said, I feared for my life. And they did an investigation of Ferguson, and they found out that they had what I call a plantation fine system. And they had probation companies that were for profit, getting rich off the poor. They bring them in. You spend more money paying the probation company than you do paying your fine off. Well, any state in the United States or any city that have the probation for profit, it's akin to slavery. And if it's not slavery, it's very close, because you have all these poor people that are on probation, that are paying to these for-profit companies, and they are not paying very much toward their fines. Now let's talk a little bit about how and what we are expected to do as citizens, because we've talked for a long time about the abuse, especially in the black community, but now it's happening in the white community because a white kid was shot to death a few weeks ago over some marijuana after he passed the cop. The cop lied and said that he tried to run him over. He didn't try to run him over. He was driving off, and when he passed the cop, he shot him. All the shots went in his shoulder and neck area. Killed him dead, a 19-year-old. He was a white kid. So what we have to do as a society is we have to let the people know that are responsible for managing police departments, sheriff departments, whatever law enforcement there is, that we're not going to take this anymore. And we're going to hold somebody accountable. But if you have been abused by the police, there's a way for you to sue them, and you can sue him or her and the city. You sue them for violating your civil rights, so you can bankrupt the officer that did it, and then you sue the city for allowing him to do what he did. So every time you file a lawsuit against a policeman, it should be 2 lawsuits. One against the county or the city, and one against that officer for violating your civil rights. Federal law allows you to do that. If we get this going the way it should be going, I feel that we can make a dent in the abuse that's going on. I want to talk a little bit today about an abusive situation that most citizens don't know about. It happens in the county jail. It's like a hellion dungeon, the way they treat the people in the county jail. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the Sacramento County Jail. The sheriff there is Scott Jones, and I'm sure he's a nice guy, but he was trained by McGinnis, John McGinnis. There's never been a person shot to death by the Sacramento County Sheriff when John McGinnis was sheriff where something wrong happened. Never. Even when they shot a guy in the back that was running away from the sheriff's department. He had a policy for every abuse. And Sheriff Jones is probably a nice young man, but he was trained by John McGinnis. There was an article in the Sacramento Bee on Sunday about this officer named Pfeiffer. This officer Pfeiffer, they call him Scotty. That's his nickname. Scotty Pfeiffer has 4 assaults pending against him in lawsuits. And he beat this man, Mr. Reyes, in the street, had his foot on him. Mr. Reyes was not resisting. I watched the video. And he beat him as if he was trying to kill him. What happened to him? Nothing. They did an internal review. So anytime a sheriff department or police department use their own internal affairs to investigate themselves, it is akin to allowing a fox to keep a chicken count. He loves eating chickens. Every time he gets a chance, he's going to eat some. So the same thing with police. No one has enough integrity to investigate themselves, because who wants to put their friends in jail? So there was an internal investigation by the sheriff department, and Officer Pfeiffer was cleared. He's now still on the street doing whatever he was doing, and the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors have been numb. Mr. Cerner, I think his name is Phil, I'm not sure, is the chairman of the Board of Supervisors for the Sacramento County Supervisors. They have not said a word in reference to all of the millions of dollars that the county pays out to cover bad law enforcement officers with the Sacramento County Sheriff. They pay it out and they shut up. New York, when Garner family settled with New York, they got $25 million. And the officer, Palentello, that killed Mr. Garner, he's still getting a check. There's something wrong with this. And it's not going to change until we demand change. We have the power as people to make sure that we need police officers. I'm not saying that we don't, but we don't need the bad ones. And one bad officer can corrupt many, many good officers because they see him or her doing what they did and they won't tell. They have a code. They will not talk. And even when they are investigated and interviewed, they refuse to talk. But if you do it, they want to hold you in contempt and keep you in jail forever. But cops oftentimes say, no, I'm not answering that question, even on oath. Or they'll take the fifth, which tells you, yeah, I did something criminal, but I'm not going to talk to you about it. The other advice I want to give to is young people who are stopped by the police. If you're a young person and you drive in any state or any city in the United States, keep your driver's license and your insurance on the sun visor. That way you don't have to reach and get anything. The officer can see your hands and you won't get shot to death for reaching for a gun that you don't have. So this is how I trained my sons when they started driving. I said, keep all of your stuff up on your sun visor. So when the cops stop you, keep your hand on the steering wheel and only answer the questions about why he stopped you. Where you going is not one of those answers. What are you doing out is not one of those answers. You're free. You can go anywhere you want to. You don't have to answer any questions other than what reference the reason you were stopped. And if he stops you, said you have a busted tail light, you were wandering, you look like you're tired, tell him, I wasn't doing it, but I'd rather have the ticket than to be in dialogue. So just write the ticket and let me go. Can I search your car? No. Because you have to have probable cause to search your car. But we have young people who don't know. They allow the police to search their car. They have a little weed in it. They can't search your car without a warrant if you don't give them permission. If they take you to the police station, the first question you ask them, am I on arrest? If they say no, you said, I'm leaving. If they don't let you go, they kidnap you. You can sue them. You don't have to take this abuse if you understand the system. If they stop you, you answer the question they ask you about why they stop you. Even if and I tell young black men, if you saw a murder and you witnessed it, if they want you to answer some questions about it, request a lawyer because you could be the target. Because if you saw it and you know enough about it, you're it. They got guys in jail now that did not do it. I read thousands of files. Thousands. And I've asked myself, why is this person in jail? This can't be right. I read thousands of them. And you got men in jail doing 25 to life. Some of them are never going to go home, and they simply did not do it. And you have DAs, they have a word that they use for DAs, they call it prosecutorial discretion. There's no such word. There's no prosecutor in the United States of America that has prosecutorial discretion because all they want is a conviction. They don't care if you did it. They don't care if you're guilty or innocent. They just want a conviction because it furthers their political goals in life. They want to be known as this prosecutor that won. They don't care whether you did it or not. You will not believe some of the people that are sitting in jail and why they're in jail. This one little case I'll just share. There was a guy that was at a party. Nobody was identified out of the group of guys that were there but this one man. And he was the only one the police could identify. And what they did with him was they told him, you either tell us who were with you or we're going to make it you. That guy is still in jail right now. Didn't fire the gun, didn't even know the guy had a gun, and he's in prison for 25 to life. Now I want to talk a little bit about what you can do on your own to make things better. You have to start writing letters to your councilmen, to your county supervisors, to your state senators and your congressmen, and let them know that enough is enough. We need federal legislation from Washington, D.C. to direct and instruct police agencies on the new training the police officers need to receive. Freddie Gray didn't die because they just put him in a van. He died because of how they took him down. They took him down, and then they put their knee on the base of his neck and head. That's a tender spot to break your neck. And that's exactly what happened to him. Now they have 5 officers in jail. They probably wouldn't be in jail if they had just taken him down, cuffed him, and stood him up. When they were dragging Freddie to the van, you can see in the video, his neck was already broken. He could not walk. And then in Baltimore, they have what they call giving you a rough ride. They handcuff you, put you in the van and all that metal, and then they drive fast and stop and cut corners and let you fall and hit your head. They call that a rough ride. And the administrators and police administrators knew about this. They have not convicted not one officer. And there was a guy that had his neck broken in one of these incidents. And we have all over the country, they're paying out millions and millions of dollars, and they won't act because the leaders in police and law enforcement refuse to police their own. So if you don't do something about it, anarchy is going to start. It's already started. You have a guy in Texas walk up on a policeman, unheard of, and just executes him. Now something sparked that. People don't normally act that way toward law enforcement. All of us got people we know in law enforcement. Some of us used to be peace officers. But you have people now that are willing to walk up and just shoot dead a cop that they don't even know, and it's because of how the police have been policing our neighborhoods. You have young men that are angry, and anybody can get a gun today. Don't mistake it. Anyone. You can get any kind of gun that you want today in America. AK-47, any kind of automatic weapon, shotgun. You can get whatever you want if you got the money. And they're even making ghost guns now. Think about the NRA when you think about that. They have guns that are made that do not have serial numbers. They are made for the hood. How do you think all these young people are getting these guns? They're not doing enough burglaries to get the guns that they're getting. They are being supplied by people who deal in guns. That has to change. The NRA is running our country right now. They throw that Second Amendment thing up, the right to have a gun, and they pretty much can do whatever. You're not going to look what happened. All those 25 kids. It didn't spark anything. They were outraged for a few days, and then they went back to politics as normal in Washington, D.C. Now, one bill came out to affect what happened. And then you have those 9 shot to death in Charlotte. Nothing. Matter of fact, the governor said that, Miss Haley said that this is not the time to talk about gun control. I couldn't think of a better time to talk about it. You have 9 people that are dead. A guy sat in prayer meeting and shot them to death. I'm going to talk a little bit about politics. You know, the Republican primaries are started up, and it's a lot of fun. It's the best year ever. Donald is in front, and he's promoting anything that you don't like. He's promoting it. If you don't like women, he got that covered. You don't like gays, he got that covered. You don't like blacks, he got that covered. You don't like immigrants, he got that covered. And then he turned around and say, I love all of them. They love me. They know I'll treat them right. So my belief is that Donald Trump will get the Republican nomination. It's going to be a lot of fun in 2016 watching this fallout from this. Then you have Dr. Carson. Now, Dr. Carson is a pretty smart guy, but he said something last night on TV that was amazing to me. He said that the Muslims like the Christian characters of American Christians. And I said to myself, now there's a Negro that has forgotten his history. Now we had Christians in America from 1619 forward. Slavery, peonage, segregation. And untold genocide. I believe that 120 million Africans died during the slave passage. 100 to 150,000 Native Americans dead. All by Christians. They were doing fine until they were introduced to Christianity. Most people don't even want to talk about that. They had a professor in Sacramento this week that chastised a young lady, Native American lady for using the word genocide. The government were paying for the sterilization of Indians in America until the late 60s. If that's not genocide, what is? And I believe that the professor was Jewish. Now that was laughable. A Jewish professor had a problem with the word genocide being used. And if you say anything about that group, right away you're anti-Semitic. If you say anything, I don't care whether you're right or not. And right now, the Jewish country is one of the few apartheid countries left. A lot of people don't know about that. If you're Arab and you live in Israel, you don't have any rights. You get what's left over. They're treating them the way America treated us 60 years ago. And we're in bed with them. And then you have Netanyahu say that there cannot be a two-state solution. Now let me say something about Rubio. He's my favorite. Marco Rubio and a lot of Americans like me believe that any Cuban that came to America under the wet foot, dry foot policy is equal to being an illegal immigrant. That's how Rubio family got here. And this guy is just ugly against immigration. Every Cuban that came here under the wet foot, dry foot policy, I call it affirmative action immigration. They might as well just walk across the border. Now he's as harsh as he can be, but he don't have to worry because he's not going to be the nominee anyway. And then we have Carly, and I think that she's doing quite well, but she has a problem. She's a female in an all-white Southern control party. It's not going to happen. So this is my voice, and this is Dr. Jackson, and I'll see you next time.